everyone, it's Zach Wright, founder and CEO of Grapevine Software, the virtual office platform for your remote and hybrid workforce. Today, we are going to be discussing, as always, the Future of Work Weekly Report. This is going to go out April 17th, and we are going to be discussing the two articles that have been flooding my news feed, especially on LinkedIn, but also on some news announcements and other people who are influencers of future of work. So before we dive into the articles, I want to say I'm going to do this a little bit differently today, where not only am I going to go through the two articles with the bullet points and then maybe some inputs here and there, but after we discuss the bullet points, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to discuss the articles and show you different areas that are called out. Because I think today, too many people only read the headlines and then they don't actually read the articles, but they still take the time to share those pieces of information that they don't even know if it is true or not. So what I want to do is make sure that you get all the ins and outs from these articles that are trending about the future of work, and not just someone's opinion on it, but the actual reporter's work and research detailed here. So before we get started, smash that like button so we can continue to get these videos out to more and more people who are pioneering the future of work. And then also subscribe so you stay updated anytime that we release the Future of Work report, as well as our Untangled Minds podcast, where we talk to future of work experts, and any other videos that we might put out there, like feature highlights, which will be coming out soon for Grapevine. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the first article. We're going to be talking about the article from Fortune. Whenever I share my screen, you'll see that it's from Yahoo Finance, but the original article was from Fortune. This was published April 15th, 2024, and the title is Nike CEO blames remote work on innovation lag, but analysts say the issue is deeper than that. So the three bullet points that I took away from this article to talk about today was the first one: Nike CEO blames remote work for innovation lag. John Donahoe, which is the CEO of Nike, attributes Nike's innovation pipeline issue to remote work during the pandemic, stating that bold innovation is challenging to achieve via Zoom meetings. He was quoted saying, "In hindsight, it turns out it's really hard to do bold, disruptive innovation to develop a boldly disruptive shoe on Zoom." And we'll talk more about that as I share the article and share my screen. The second bullet point is analysts disagree with this assessment, saying that John Donahoe, his assessment isn't necessarily what they think is the issue with Nike. So industry experts argue that Nike's innovation challenges run deeper than remote work, pointing out that other brands thrive despite remote setups. Quoted, "So I'm not sure that we can blame remote work here on Nike's issue." Again, we'll dive deeper in that, and I'll show you that through the screen share to dig a little bit deeper and give our insights on that. Then the third one for this article, third and last bullet point for this article, is Nike's innovation problem stems from other factors. Critiques suggest that Nike relied too heavily on best-selling products during the pandemic, neglecting the creation of new, unique offerings. The quote for this bullet point from the article is, "Nike's innovation issues," Powell said, the person who's been quoted here, "stems from the company's decisions to rely too heavily on bestsellers during the pandemic while taking the focus off of creating new, unique products." So what we see here is that what the Nike CEO, John Donahoe, is stating as the blame or the issue of innovation lag is remote work, but we're seeing that analysts, whenever they do their deep dive, is saying that it might be something entirely different that doesn't have anything to do with remote work. And this is why I think it's so important to have videos out there like this, to have future of work pioneers out there sharing these stories and breaking it down for you. Because when we read just the headline, we can take it away that, oh, remote work is the issue with Nike. But when we dive in deeper, we see some pretty big red flags. So let's go ahead and share the screen and look at the article together. All right, so here's the article. We see, like I said, it's from Yahoo Finance, originally published by Fortune, but there are a few key things that I want to call out here. So we talked about this quote where it says, in hindsight, it turns out it's really hard to do bold, disruptive innovation to develop a boldly disruptive shoe. But then what I want to do is continue that quote here. So our team came back together 18 months ago in person, and we recognize this. So we realigned our company, and over the last year, we have been ruthlessly focused on building or rebuilding our disruptive innovation pipeline along with our iterative innovation pipeline. Now, great quote, sure, that might make sense. But if we dig in a little bit deeper, these comments come shortly after Nike announces a round of layoffs in December and a plan to build a multi-year cycle of innovation. What I want to call out here is that whenever John Donahue is saying that remote work is to blame, what he doesn't mention is we also had layoffs in December. And anytime that there are layoffs in an organization, whether you're in good standings, if you're a public company like Nike and your stock is on the high, I don't know if that's the case, it doesn't matter to the employees, because what they hear whenever people are laid off or if there's a reduction in force, whatever terminology that you want to use, is they hear, oh, my position could be in jeopardy, right? Because these people just got laid off and they're talking about a multi-year cycle of innovation. What does that mean? Right? So that's what we have to think about. We can't just read the headlines and then not put into perspective or give context around all of the details, right? Exactly what Donahue is trying to avoid here. We came back together 18 months ago in person, and then we recognized that it was hard to do that on Zoom. But whenever we look at it, there was a layoff. Layoffs mean that employees are going to fall in line to keep their jobs, meaning that they're going to be less likely to want to innovate or be creative, because that might be punishable to them if that innovative idea goes badly, right? So these are things to think about whenever it comes to innovation. Right. And I'm assuming that a lot of people or John Donahue and the team is looking at innovation lag as also productivity issues. I don't know if that's how they're thinking it, but that's how I'm taking it. And so that's something that we have to think about. But let's continue. So the other part that the person calls out here is they talk about how there were a whole bunch of brands who really thrived during and post-pandemic, even though they were working remotely. And that's where that quote comes in. So I'm not sure that we can blame remote work here on Nike's issues. And towards the end of this article, we're going to talk about what might be the root cause of the real issues here. And so what we see here too is, just to call this out, it's 2024. He says Nike was one of the first footwear companies to bring its employees back to the office on a hybrid basis in May 2021. And in January, Nike became the first major shoe company to publicly call its employees back to the office 4 days a week, a departure from their typical 3 days in office hybrid model most shoe companies had adopted in the post-pandemic world. And we even see them call out other companies, big competitors. Other shoe companies like Adidas and Crocs have maintained their flexible hybrid models since the pandemic, and some have thrived while allowing employees to work in a fully remote environment. Now, I don't know the specific numbers. I don't know how innovative Adidas and Croc have been. I'm assuming that maybe they have, because they're calling out that some have thrived, and I'm sure that these are the ones that they're calling out. And so whenever Nike's CEO says that remote work is to blame for innovation lag, if that's the case, how is Adidas and Crocs doing this? And you'll see like later down here, like the brands where fresh products continue to flow are Hoka, Own, Brooks, and New Balance. So I mean, if you look at these first three, you might be thinking, okay, well, they're new, so almost everything is going to be innovative that's outside of their typical line of products right now. But then we look at New Balance, who have been around for a long time, right? And they're still being able to push out fresh products that continue to flow. Right now, now New Balance, there's probably some branding, there's probably some new target audience that is really contributing to this, because we see a lot of Gen Zers and their fashion choices actually benefit New Balance, which is strange, right? It used to be the dad shoe, and now it's kind of the dad shoe plus Gen Zers. But the point is that one CEO is blaming remote work on innovation lag, while the others have adapted to the way of the working world today, and they've been able to thrive, and their innovation hasn't taken a hit because of it. Another way to think about this is, okay, you had your employees working remotely during the pandemic. They probably got a touch of that autonomy and the accountability that they hold within themselves and the freedom of being a remote worker. And then they asked them to come back into the office for a hybrid schedule. So now they still have a little bit of freedom, but 3 days out of the week, they're going back into the office. And then now you take it another step forward and say, okay, you have to be in the office 4 days a week, and topple that on top, or put on top of that, the layoff that happened. Innovation on all of those steps are going to take a hit. They're going to take sacrifices, right? And so that's what I mean by reading beyond the headlines, because remote work is not the issue here, right? And so let's I mean, they even call it out here. It says Nike was one of the first to go back, and much of the chagrin of the employees. If remote was really an issue for Nike, they should have solved that by getting back into the office, right? And so they're calling them out and saying, no, like that's just an excuse that you're using. And so to finish out this article, I want to touch on these last two paragraphs here, because these are the most important to me, from the analyst to really put Nike in its place and say, no, it's not remote work. Stop saying that. It's something deeper. And so this says, in an interview with FN Williams trading analyst Sam Poser, he attributes Nike's innovation issues to a series of bad decisions throughout the last few years, including a broad loss of talent at the company, layoffs, probably people leaving. Because anytime that there's layoffs, you'll also see a contributing factor of attrition happen. A decision to lean too heavily on D2C, or direct to consumer, and a shift towards making merchandising decisions based off of financial goals that hurt brand equity. So let's just add to this casserole of innovation lag and demoralizing the culture by focusing on financial goals. Now, don't get me wrong, every single company has to focus on financial goals, but whenever you make that your number one priority, you take out the consideration of the employee, the consumer, the innovation, and so much more. Because whenever you are only focused on financial goals and that's what you're using to make your decisions, it it doesn't allow for creativity. It doesn't allow for innovation to occur because everybody's walking on eggshells, right? If you were told by your manager, hey, we're making some changes, we really got to cut the cost to continue to survive. Not saying that Nike needs to do that to survive, but if you hear that, your first thought, selfishly and rightfully so, is, oh crap, should I start looking for another job because they're going to do another round of layoffs, right? In addition to that, like, people are already seeing Hoka, On, Brooks, New Balance, Adidas, Crocs. They're allowing people to work remotely. It's a lateral move. Why not just go over there and have better freedom, right? But even deeper than that, this is where I want to talk about. So keep focus on bad decisions throughout the last few years, not just this year. It's not as open a door at the company as it once was. They're not listening, Poser said. This is the analyst, remember? Echoing a note he wrote to investors in mid-March that criticized the company's current C-suite leadership. Working from home or working in the office, senior management should still be listening. And so what they're really saying here is that the root cause of the innovation lag for Nike is bad decisions and not listening. And now that could be not listening to their employers, because it says back up here, it was saying, and much to the chagrin of their employees, they were the first ones to go back into the office. So that's already taken down the motivation and engagement from employees. And then you factor in bad decisions. That's not going to be good for the company as a whole. And whenever it's not good for the company, there could be other layoffs coming down the road, right? And so, but this is the biggest one. Like, management should still be listening. And he says they're not listening. We know that employees who are heard are 4.6 times more likely to stay at a company longer, to be more productive, to be more engaged, and be more satisfied with their position. So if we see all of these things happening, why are we saying that remote work is to blame on the innovation lag at Nike? Let's be truthful to ourselves and stop using remote work as the scapegoat whenever remote work is not the issue. It's leadership. It's how we train people to be leaders in a new working world. Being a manager or a leader in the office is a lot different than being a remote manager or a hybrid manager. You have to have operational cadences. You have to have structure within your organization. You have to have a way to keep everybody aligned, updated, and then a better way to communicate and collaborate. Obviously, that's where Grapevine comes in. But even beyond the technology and the infrastructure, you have to train your people to adapt to this new working world. And you also need to adapt too. And if you see your competitors are able to do this, don't throw out a lie just to get the headline and say that it's remote working's fault. So that's article number one. The next one we're going to be talking about, it's a Yahoo Finance too, but it's also from Fortune. But we're going to be talking about how CEOs are conceding to hybrid work. So I wanted to do it in this order because we see a CEO that is not conceding to the data and actually blaming remote work for their lack of innovation. And then now we're going to be talking about how some CEOs have already experienced that hardship and they understand that it's not going to be the way that it was in the traditional working world of 9 to 5, 5 days a week in the office. So let's go ahead and jump to that article now. Okay, so I'm going to go full screen again here, but I'm going to do what I normally do, but do it quicker like I did on the last article. And then we'll dive into the screen share where we walk through the article together. So this article comes from Yahoo Finance, originally in Fortune, and the title is Defeated CEOs Are Now Conceding Hybrid Working is Here to Stay, a year after 62% said they expected a full-time return to office by 2026 or 2026. This was originally published on April 12th, 2024. And these are the 3 bullet points that I took away as reading this. And again, after I discuss this, we'll share the screen and walk through it together. So the first bullet point, defeated CEOs accept hybrid working, finally. A KPMG survey reveals that just 1/3 of the U.S. CEOs expect a full return to office in the next 3 years, marking a significant shift from previous predictions. One was quoted, leaders who believe that office workers will be back at their desks 5 days a week in the near future are now in the small majority, meaning that CEOs are finally realizing, hey, this is actually not just a pandemic thing. This is not just a aftershock of people wanting remote work, but it is a full-on workplace shift that we now have to adopt or adapt to. And they're basically saying that now people who don't believe that are in the minority, where before last year they were in the majority with 62%. Now, the second bullet point is rise of hybrid work. Nearly half of CEOs now embrace hybrid work, up from 34% last year, and a third exploring the feasibility of a 4-day work week. This is the quote that we have here. Many CEOs have dedicated the last year to shaking off pandemic-era habits of working from home and calling staff back to the office, but their mandates have been met with resistance. And not only resistance, this is outside of the quote now, it's not only been met with resistance, it's actually been met with people leaving the organization or just not listening to it. And as an outcome, people have reported worse job satisfaction as a result. So that's something to think about before we dive into sharing the screen. The last bullet point, recognition of the future of work. CEOs acknowledge that forcing employees back into the office indefinitely is unsustainable, with flexibility becoming a key factor in attracting and retaining top talent. Now, the quote here is CEOs have realized that forcing people back into the office can only go on for so long. We are at the threshold of a new dawn, and trying to hold on to past mindsets will have a direct impact on the caliber of people you attract going forward. That is important too, because if you are a company that is growing and you need to move quickly, but you have a mandate for them to work into the office, well, one, you're already limiting the best people that you could get. Because no offense to wherever your headquarters is, you're not going to find 100% of the best people in a 50-mile radius. And that's even pushing it. Let's say like a 30-mile radius, right? So being remote or being hybrid and definitely being flexible in those approaches, you are already expanding the talent pool that you can get. And if you're concerned about how do I hire remote people, how do I file taxes with remote payrolls, there are tons of companies out there that are being built as we speak, that have already been built over the past few years during the pandemic, like Global Velocity. I mentioned them before. There's other people out there who help you in those areas. So just like you would hire an accountant, you could hire those people to help you. And in some cases, there's softwares that help you. So you don't even need to hire, you just get a software and then set that up for yourself. But this is important, recognition of the future of work, right? We've been saying it, the future of work pioneers have been saying it for a long time. Nick Bloom has published research talking about this. Brian Elliott, I think his name's Dave Keynes. There's so many people out there. Amina Moreau from Radius. We've been saying this, and now they're finally coming around, which is a good thing. So let's not beat them up too much. But now those are the 3 bullet points. Let's go ahead and share the screen and look at the article together. All right, so this is the article that I was talking about. These will be listed in the show notes so you guys can read them yourselves. But defeated CEOs conceding to hybrid. So there's a little bit up here, but I want to really dive into this area and then even more so the change of heart. So basically, what we've already covered is that it's a complete 360 on their stance from last year, where 62% of CEOs surveyed predicted working from home would end by 2026, which is, that just tells you that these people aren't necessarily reviewing market analysis or research on future of work. And that's my issue here, is that too many people are going off a gut feeling rather than the data. And if you run your business off a gut feeling, you're not going to be around for a while. You have to have a combination of both, especially whenever it comes to the outcomes that this type of decision makes. We saw that companies who have an RTO policy or a mandate, that their employees' job satisfaction significantly reduced as a result. Oftentimes, as we'll see, leaving them with higher attrition. So let's look at this article real quick. So the bosses are backtracking. Nearly half of the CEOs have concluded that the future of work is hybrid, up from 34% last year. Sizable chunk of CEOs aren't just embracing remote work on Fridays. They're going one step further and ditching the workday altogether. So what they're calling out here is something that has made the rounds in the future of work conversations as well, which is, instead of a 5-day work week, we have a 4-day work week. I don't know where I stand on that position just yet, because I'm a workaholic. I don't expect my employees to do that. But as you're a startup, it's a little bit different because you need kind of all those hours. But if you can make your workplace flexible, then working Friday or not working Friday doesn't really make too much of a difference. So we're still considering that, but that's something to just call out here is that they're not only adopting hybrid work, but they're even looking into shortening the work week, which is kind of strange. That's a full transition and even a step further. So that's why I wanted to call that out. But let's go to the heart of the change, as they titled it here. So many CEOs have dedicated last year to shaking off pandemic era habits. We talked about this a little bit, of working from home and calling staff back into the office, but their mandates have been met with resistance. And so what they do here is they give specific examples. So Deutsche Bank decision to outright ban staff from working at home on Fridays and Mondays have not been taken lightly by the staff. This is what I was talking about with Nike blaming remote work. This is what's happening at Deutsche Bank, right? So a large number of its 90,000 strong workforce have reportedly started posting critical remarks on their company's internal messaging board to make their distaste for the new setup known. And what I can go ahead and predict is that it's not only going to be disgruntled employees, but it's going to be disgruntled former employees, because they're going to start leaving Deutsche Bank. And so we'll see how this plays out. But with this article, we at least give some specific examples instead of just kind of pie in the sky assumptions, right? We're not going off a gut feeling like some CEOs. We're going to what the data suggest. And then they call out the behemoth, Amazon, is perhaps the most documented example of how ugly the RTO battle can get. Around 30,000 employees signed a petition protesting the company's in-office mandate, and more than 1,800 pledged to walk out from their jobs to take a stand. Now, that's not like too much because Amazon has a lot of employees. I'm talking about the 1,800 number, but the 30,000, I mean, that's enough to form a union. And we've already seen some of these things happen, right? And then in addition to that, we've seen last week where the UK rolled out that it's a law that employees can have 2 times where they ask for flexible work arrangements. So now in the UK, at least, they can have these times where they have, or they can ask about flexible work, and the company has to abide by that, right? So some governments are taking it into their own hands. And so it would be interesting to see if America does anything like that. Maybe, probably not, because there's already disdain for the government around here and mandating certain things. So anyway, but that's important to call out, because even the top companies in the world, some of the biggest, are dealing with this. And I know some people who work at Amazon and they actually work from home. So they're probably going to budge on that and allow it to happen. But then let's see. Research has echoed that nearly half of companies with return to office mandates witness a higher level of employee attrition. This is what we were talking about with dissatisfied employees, not only being dissatisfied or actively disengaged, they're actively leaving. So, and then they said, then they had anticipated 29% of companies enforcing office returns are struggling with recruitment. We talked about that. You're limiting your global talent pool, and people are not wanting to come to an organization these days that don't allow flexibility, autonomy, right? The people have the power, which is nice. In my opinion, some people don't think that, but okay, let's keep going. So, yeah, so this one was the one that I wanted to call out too. So with Gen Z over the next few years making up, in some cases, the majority of the workforce, how long can CEOs insist people come to the office when people are choosing to work remotely? We are at the threshold of a new dawn, and trying to hold on to past mindsets will have a direct impact on the caliber of people you attract going forward, right? People are speaking up now. They're not just biting the bullet. They're not packing their lunch every day and going to the office 9 to 5, working in the factory, so on and so forth. People have a voice and they're making it heard. And this is what is so great, because just a little fun fact about me, my undergraduate was in psychology with an emphasis on organizational psychology. And my thesis paper was on the happy productive worker thesis. And my thesis, or my hypothesis, was organizations need to start caring about their employees more, or we're going to see a shift in how these things play out. Now, I wasn't talking about remote work at the time because I was a big in-office person. But now, whenever we look at the stats and the data, not just remote work, but flexible work is better for a lot of different people, right? Not just me. You look at mothers, you look at women, you look at people of color, there's disabled people. There are so many benefits whenever it comes to remote work, that if you can allow people to work remotely and they want that choice, then you should let them happen. You should let them do that. And there's software out there that is being developed, i.e. Grapevine, that allows you to stay connected and engaged, aligned, all from wherever in the world, right? So it's no longer that you need the physical office to keep everybody engaged and aligned and to be productive. It's just you need that infrastructure. And that's what we're providing to a lot of organizations. So I digress right there. Don't want to turn this into a Grapevine promotion, but these are the articles that we're talking about today. So we talked about the Nike CEO blaming remote work and how that actually isn't true. It's more on the basis of bad decisions from leadership that has been an outcome in their innovation lag. And then we talk about how CEOs are finally conceding to hybrid work being what the future of work will look like. And not even that, some cases they're taking it a step forward to only 4 days a week. And then we see people who do have return to office mandates that they're seeing higher attrition than they expected. So think about this as you run your organization, whether you're the founder, the CEO, or in the C-suite, or a business leader who has a team. Think about this. Listen to your team. Listen to your employees. Take into consideration all of these things that are happening. Study the market and find new ways to work. Not every company can be remote. I understand that 100%, but you can be flexible in certain ways. So think about that. All right. That is the Future of Work Weekly Report for April 17th, 2024. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these specific articles or anything to do with the future of work. Drop something in the comment and we'll be sure to respond, or we could even bring it up in our next Future of Work Weekly Report. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with other Future of Work pioneers out there. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next Future of Work Weekly Report.